Hello and welcome to Wide Angle. And today, within the Wide Angle format, we have Dateline Delhi. Now, what is Dateline Delhi about? Looking at the list of foreign correspondents, one discovered that there are 543 men, women listed as foreign correspondents in the capital city of India. So we thought, why should we not draw on their considerable experience and see how they look at India and how they look at the neighborhood, which is also part of their parish, as it were. Now today, as to begin with, we have Adam Roberts of The Economist, thank you very much, and Com Carpentier, who is World Affairs Journal, and he, in fact, just informed me that he was born in the Canary Islands. And I know Canary Island is an island where they have Indian Sindhi perfume sellers who dominate that market.
Absolutely.
Now, you're looking at the great Indian election carnival. What is the basic thing that you have noticed about this campaign?
That I have noticed?
Yeah.
Well, the great contrast of an Indian election, general election like this, to any other that I've covered is the great size, the length of it. I mean, nowhere else have I ever seen an election that stretches out over such a long period. We're used to seeing American elections with a long campaign period, but actually the voting happens in a single day and we get a result fairly soon after. British elections, where I come from, campaigning over a few weeks, but the voting all in one day. The idea of staggering your voting over such an immense territory, such a large population, is a remarkable thing for any outsider. But of course, we start to travel around, we start to see the constituencies, the places, and the characters and the candidates, the colour, and we come to understand quite why it has to be spread out so much and why you have to stagger it and just deal with the huge logistics of an election like this.
Com?
Well, I would say after having been present at 4 or 5 general elections, this one strikes me for being probably more in tune with the current international promotional and advertising criteria, in the sense that there has been modernization as far as reaching out to the voters and making catchy slogans and catchy images, and there is a lot of salesmanship, which I guess goes with the modernization of media.
Is this kind of marketing, you think, good for democracy or bad for it? I'm asking you.
Well, I think it's inevitable. I think you can't lament it because it's what happens. It's what happens in every election, and it's a function of the technology that we all use, the fact that we all watch television programs, we all have cell phones, and many of us go onto the internet and so on. It's also a reflection of the power of leaders, the importance of characters, of individuals showing leadership, the charisma of certain leaders, the lack of charisma of others, the ability of people when it comes to a national election to try and imagine, I'm not voting for my constituency MP, I'm voting for a Prime Minister. I'm thinking, who do I want to lead the country? And I know that, for example, in Britain, we have the same system as you have. When I go to cast my vote in my constituency, of course I think about the local candidate. But actually I'm thinking more than that. I'm thinking about, who do I want to represent my country internationally? Who do I think can offer the leadership that the country needs? So part of what I'm doing when I'm casting a vote is not picking my local party, my local candidate. I'm thinking, who's the number one guy in the country or the number one woman in the country to run this place and to represent me abroad? So I think when it comes to personalisation of politics like that, inevitably there will be slogans, there will be marketing, there will be hopefully debates between them that will get people interested and excited about politics.
Has there been much debate on evidence?
Well, not debate between the candidates. I would love to see in India, for example.
Have you seen a spat between journalists and the candidates?
I've seen a little. I've seen the interview that Rahul Gandhi gave and his utter failure in that interview and his failure to follow up and give any more interviews. I thought that was abysmal for a leader of a political party to be so weak. But I've seen some attempts by journalists to press their leaders, to press Modi, to press Kejriwal, to answer difficult questions. But I'd like to see much more of it. It would make democracy so much more vibrant if there were these discussions.
Is it? I don't know how it compares with your country, but in the United States and in India increasingly, political leaders and leaders of major parties are beginning to tailor their statements, and they want to put out exactly, they don't want to be quizzed.
Well, they have to be. They haven't got much choice. I mean, in Britain, for example, if you're the Prime Minister, you have to be quizzed once a week in Parliament and answer direct questions from your fellow politicians. In Britain now, we have a prime ministerial debate on TV, a series of 3, and the candidates have to debate each other on policy. We all know about the American presidential debates that go on forever. I think in France too they have it. So increasingly in democracies, candidates debate each other, and that's what I'd like to see in India too.
Combe, what is agitating you about these elections?
I am, as usual, disappointed by the large amount of negative campaigning, in the sense attacks, personal attacks on opponents. And throughout the world, people are deploring the negative electoral politics, but nobody seems to be able to do anything about it, because unfortunately...
What exactly do you mean? I mean, that candidates call each other names. Is that what's bothering you?
Very often, instead of presenting what they are going to do, they like to point out to what the others haven't done or will not do. I mean, it's fair to attack them on what they haven't done or what they have done wrongly, but there is, as you know, heavy emphasis on trying to demolish the credibility and the character of the opposition.
But wouldn't you say, if you think about Modi, for example, that a lot of what he's been doing in this campaign is talking about what he did in Gujarat, what his record in Gujarat is, and the implication being what he's done in Gujarat with the infrastructure or whatever, he could then do for India as a whole. Yes, he does say abusive things. He calls Rahul Gandhi a princeling, or he is quite rough and ready as a campaigner, but he does talk about what he'd like to do and what he has done. I mean, I don't think it's all negative.
No, I would agree with you. I think Modi has, in the minds of most people, a very impressive capital to present from what he has done in Gujarat, and he has been playing that very effectively, I must say, because I've seen the Modi wave rising in the last several months. I'm generally talking about candidates for the Lok Sabha, and the fact that they tend to pelt each other with all sorts of accusations, which, as I said, is inevitable worldwide, I suppose, because that's what people remember, unfortunately. They don't necessarily believe or pay much attention to what seems to be good news because or promises, but they are very impressed with what doesn't seem to go well with the other side. But this being said, I do agree that Modi has been presenting a very effective proposal for change, for delivery, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very pragmatic, result-oriented campaign, not ideological.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything ideological in what he has said or done.
Yeah.
Is there any ideology in this campaign whatsoever from any side?
I think there's very broadly a division. I think it's not perfectly articulated, but I think we roughly have an idea from Congress that it's a party that will promise some more welfare, right to food, right to work from NREGA from the previous election. It's extended, for example, subsidies on gas cylinders. It's making the sorts of statements that I think we've seen Congress traditionally make in India, that appeals to the rural poor, to those who are most desperate to be relieved from the worst forms of poverty, whereas the BJP under Mr. Modi has a more pro-business, corporate approach, saying that it wants to create the conditions for higher rates of growth. And I think that's a very basic ideological split between the two
Adam,
parties.
that we've been already discussing this election, and we are talking about almost as if we are discussing a two-party democracy. So before we enter bring other players into our ken, a two-party system more or less, but that exactly is precisely what is not on show in these elections. In fact, what we are seeing, the perception is that we were initially, the media was trying to set it up as a Modi versus Rahul Gandhi debate, which was easy for TRP ratings and easy to manage mount as a show. Now that did not happen because the Rahul souffle did not rise at all. So why do you think did that happen? Rahul, did you have great expectations of Rahul, or you thought he showed himself up too late?
I personally didn't have very great expectations for Rahul. I thought his campaign in Uttar Pradesh in 2012 was disappointing, and worse, I thought his reaction to his failure there was very, very weak, that he didn't come back afterwards.
Cool.
Well, the same question, I guess. I also didn't really have much expectation because, let's face it, experience takes time to acquire. And, you know, you can't expect somebody...
to go back to my earlier point, that we are discussing Modi, Rahul, and this is not about Modi and Rahul. This is the media hype has been about Modi, and the absence of media focus on the regional leaders is almost is deafening. I mean, you have Jayalalitha in Tamil Nadu. She is a power to reckon with. You have leaders in Mamata in West Bengal. You have leaders in Odisha. You have leaders coming up, we do not know the faces, in Andhra Pradesh. Yeah. And these, we are not looking at these faces. And where do you think will these fit into the post-election game?
Well, I think maybe we're being a little unfair on the media, because I think if you get out of Delhi and you're out in Calcutta, as I was 10 days ago, or if you're down in the south, as I will be tomorrow, you do, I think, get a different picture of what the politics is about. You care, for example, about the alliance that's forming in Tamil Nadu that the BJP will be part of, or whether Jayalalitha or the DMK will do well. But I think also no one really expects the Third Front to form the next government. And what people care about is who will be leading the next government. And it's very likely to be one of the two big parties with allies supporting it in office. And so it's fairly natural, I think, to think about Congress versus the BJP as a defining structure for Indian politics.
I also think that regional parties are perceived as not really being ideological. Not necessarily that the national parties are very strongly ideological, although you might argue that they are. But regional parties are primarily concerned with local issues and with protecting their sectorial interests. And we all know that many, if not most of them, would like to join the party that comes on top, because they have an interest in being part of the government so as to influence national policies in favor of their own constituencies.
I think one other point you could add to that is that in a sense the BJP has been captured by a regional figure. It's a rare example of a chief minister of a state coming forward as a prime ministerial candidate, and to leap from running a state to running in a prime ministerial campaign is an unusual thing for Indian politics. And in a sense, we are focusing on the experience of one part of India and asking, can that be reapplied to the whole of India or not? Now, maybe it's hype to ask the question,